Title: Throne of Shadows. By Kyrus Whittle. The land of Theronidos, a mountainous kingdom crowned by jagged peaks and fed by deep blue seas, was ruled by King Aegon the Ruthless. He was a conqueror whose name was whispered in fear and reverence, a man who turned sprawling plains into graveyards for his enemies and built monuments to his triumphs on the bones of those who dared defy him. Aegon had forged an empire out of chaos, but his methods were drenched in blood, his heart cold as the marble halls of his fortress, Kelion. But where the king was unyielding, his son, Prince Erythus, was different, a young man with his mother's wisdom and a heart filled with dreams of unity, not terror. Born under an auspicious star, the prince believed that the kingdom could thrive through alliances, justice, and prosperity rather than steel and fear. Father and son were like two blades forged from the same fire but honed to different purposes, one sharp with cruelty, the other with compassion. Their clash would become the stuff of legend. The storm rolled over the mountains as black as a god's wrath. Inside the cold, echoing hall of Kelion, King Aegon stood before his war council. At his feet lay the broken shield of a fallen enemy, a testament to his recent victory over the rival city-state of Lycaros. His eyes were like twin shards of obsidian, burning with ambition. The Lycarans are broken, Aegon declared, his deep voice commanding the room. Their cities will serve as our granaries, their rivers as our lifeblood. They resisted, and now they kneel. His generals roared their approval, but Prince Erythus, seated quietly at the edge of the room, clenched his jaw. At what cost, father? He asked, his voice steady but firm. Their fields burn. Their people starve. Is this how we strengthen a kingdom, by breaking it? The hall fell silent, the air thick with tension. Aegon turned to his son, his expression a mixture of disdain and curiosity. Compassion is a weakness, boy, the king said, stepping closer. A kingdom is not ruled by kindness. It is ruled by fear. And when the fear fades, Erythus challenged. When the people rise, desperate and angry, will you drown every rebellion in blood until none are left to rule? Aegon's hand clenched into a fist, but before he could respond, a messenger burst into the hall, soaked from the storm. Your Majesty, he gasped, falling to one knee. A raven has arrived from the east. The city of Calidra has revolted. Aegon's lips curled into a cruel smile. Then they will be reminded why they call me the Ruthless. As Aegon prepared his armies to march on Calidra, Erythus sought out his mentor, an old philosopher named Caliades who had once served as an advisor to Aegon's father. The prince found him in the library, surrounded by ancient scrolls and maps. Caliades, Erythus said, pacing. How can I make my father see reason? He believes peace is weakness, but I know it can be our strength. The old man sighed, his face lined with the weight of years. Your father is a man of war, Erythus. To him, the sword is the only truth. But the people, they are weary of bloodshed. If you can show them another path, they may follow you. Erythus frowned. Do you mean to defy him? I mean to guide you, Caliades said, his voice low. Plant the seeds of unity now, and they may grow when the time is right. But beware, your father will not tolerate dissent, not even from his own blood. As the armies of Theronidos marched east, Erythus secretly sent emissaries to Calidra, offering them terms of peace. He promised them protection, fair trade, and representation in the king's council, an idea unheard of in Aegon's autocracy. The Calidrans, desperate and outnumbered, agreed to the prince's terms. When Aegon's forces arrived at the gates of Calidra, they found the city open and unguarded. The king was furious, but before he could give the order to sack the city, Erythus rode out to meet him. They have surrendered, father, the prince said, his voice calm but resolute. There is no need for bloodshed. Aegon's face darkened. You overstep, boy. This is not your war to end. It is not a war at all, Erythus countered. It is an opportunity. The Calidrans will serve us willingly, not as slaves but as allies. That is how we build a lasting kingdom. The soldiers murmured among themselves, and for the first time, Aegon saw doubt in their eyes. The prince's words had struck a chord. Erythus's defiance did not go unpunished. That night, Aegon summoned his son to the war tent and made his position clear. You will not undermine me again, the king said, his voice cold. You may be my blood, but you are not my equal. You will obey me, or you will be cast aside. Erythus met his father's gaze, his heart heavy but unyielding. I cannot follow a path I do not believe in. Aegon's response was swift. The prince was arrested, his emissaries executed, and the terms of peace with Calidra were nullified. The city was razed, its people enslaved. But even as Erythus languished in the dungeons of Kelion, his message spread. The soldiers who had witnessed his stand began to question their king, and whispers of rebellion grew louder. Months later, the kingdom erupted into civil war. Erythus, freed by loyalists, led a coalition of city-states and disillusioned soldiers against his father's forces. The plains of Mithras became the battlefield where father and son would meet for the final time. Aegon, clad in blackened armor, faced his son across the field. You would betray your own blood for these sheep, he spat. I fight for a kingdom worth ruling, Erythus replied. One where strength is measured by the prosperity of its people, not the weight of its chains. The battle that followed was fierce and brutal, but in the end, Erythus emerged victorious. Aegon fell, not to a blade but to the weight of his own hubris. As he lay dying, he looked up at his son and saw, for the first time, the king he might have been. Under Erythus's rule, Theronidos became a beacon of hope and unity in a fractured world. His father's legacy was one of fear, but the prince-turned-king forged a new path, one of light and shadow, tempered by the lessons of the past. And so, the tale of Aegon the Ruthless and Erythus the Wise became legend, a story told to remind kings that even the darkest throne can yield to the dawn.